This offseason, a lot of Texans fans seem to be talking about trades. Now, if you know me, you've been following me for a while, you know I don't like trades. Well, it's not that I don't like trades. I don't like talking about trades because to me, trades are so unpredictable and you just don't know how certain teams value their picks or their players or your picks or your players. So it's kind of difficult for me to have a conversation about trades when all that is kind of unknown to me. Now, there have been some little conversations going around in the Texans community, and I'm here to debunk those. Jalen Ramsey, we're not going to get Jalen Ramsey from the Jaguars. The Jaguars will never, ever, ever, ever trade Ramsey to us. Just accept that for what it is. We're in the same division, and it's just not ever going to happen, so stop hoping it does, because it won't. The next one, Xavier Rhodes. Xavier Rhodes, the Vikings are going to trade their best corner. It's just not going to happen. And Patrick Peterson. Patrick Peterson is not going to happen because the Cardinals and Pat Pete himself already said they're not interested in a trade. So, Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Rhodes, and Patrick Peterson, those are never, ever, ever, ever going to happen. Now, I do have some realistic trade options for the Texans. One of them is, a move you make right now or, during free agency. The next one is a draft day trade. And the last two are two trades that, you could consider after the draft depending on how things go. Now, everybody knows after offensive tackle, our biggest need is corner. But like I said, Jalen Ramsey, Xavier Rhodes, and Patrick Peterson, they're off the table. You're not going to get them, so it's not going to happen. So what do you do now? There's a guy in Miami, Xavier Howard. The Dolphins, they're in rebuild mode. The other day, probably about a couple weeks ago, Xavier Howard came out himself and said that he's heard trade rumors regarding him. So obviously the Miami Dolphins, they're open to trading Xavier Howard, and for them it makes sense. They have limited cap space. They pretty much aren't going anywhere, in the foreseeable future, so there's really no point of them paying Xavier Howard, and Xavier Howard is due for a contract after the next season, so obviously they're going to have to pay him soon, similar to the Jarvis Landry situation. They didn't pay him, they traded him, so Xavier Howard is on the trade block. So, Texans, they got a need at corner. Xavier Howard is probably the best guy available to them, because he's better than anything that's out there in free agency. He's better than Ronald Darby. He's better than anyone. He's probably even better than any corner coming out of this draft class. Xavier Howard is a legit number one shutdown corner. The reason you don't hear about him is because he's in Miami. Nobody gives a damn about Miami, if we're being honest. Now, Xavier Howard, he's 6 feet tall, 200 pounds. He is currently 25 years old. He will be 26 when the season starts. So, you'll get him for a good amount of time. You have him under contract for 1 year. Then you extend him to a 4 or 5 year deal. You can easily squeeze out 5 to 6 years out of Xavier Howard. And in my opinion, to bring Xavier Howard, it really wouldn't cost much, in my opinion. Now, the trade I would propose to the Dolphins for Xavier Howard is as follows. Okay, so the Texans trade Whitney Merciless, a 2019 5th round pick, and a 2020 3rd round pick for Xavier Howard. Now, I know some of you guys might be like, whoa, why Whitney? Let's keep Whitney. No. I love Whitney Merciless, but last season he was misused. He just didn't fit what the Texans were doing. So there is really no point of keeping a guy that, although he is good if used correctly, he's a guy that's not being used correctly, and when he's out there, he's hurting your defense because he can't cover. So why have a guy like that that's being misused, that's hurting your defense, when you can trade him and a few other picks for a legit number one corner? A guy that's legitimately going to be a number one corner for your team for the next 5 to 6 years. You know, to me, it's obvious. I would definitely take this trade if I'm Houston, and if I'm Miami, it makes sense because you get Whitney Merciless, a guy who is really good. He still has a lot of years left in the tank, and you get more picks to rebuild your team. So I think both teams win here. Miami doesn't, just get picks, a lottery kind of thing. They get Whitney Merciless, a proven veteran, a guy who's going to be able to hold down one of their, sides of the field as an edge defender for the next 3 to 4 years. So I think it's a win-win for both teams. I mean, personally, I really like Xavier Howard. And another thing to note, Xavier Howard is from Houston. So there's that. Okay, now the next trade. This one is a draft day trade. The Texans are going to take an offensive tackle with their first round pick. That is pretty evident. In my opinion, there's like a 99.9% chance that the Texans pick an offensive tackle. The problem, Seattle is sitting there at 21, Minnesota is sitting there at 18. They're going to pick offensive linemen. It's pretty much guaranteed as well. So what do? You pick up the phone and you call Cleveland. You trade up to 17, one spot ahead of Minnesota and a few spots ahead of Seattle, so you can pick the guy that you want. Because see, the drop off between the third best offensive tackle that will probably be there if we trade up to 17 and the fifth best / sixth best offensive tackle if we stay there at 23, that's pretty big difference. So if you trade up to 17, you probably get your choice at what offensive tackle you're going to get. If you stay at 23, you're settling for someone. So trade up to 17, jump ahead of Minnesota and Seattle to have your choice in whatever offensive tackle you want. Now, to Cleveland, I propose this trade. For the 17th overall pick, Houston sends their own first round pick, the 23rd overall pick, a 5th round pick of 2019, and the Texans swap a 6th round pick for one of their 7th. So Houston gets the 17th overall pick and a 7th round pick. Cleveland gets the 23rd overall pick, a 5th round pick, and a 6th round pick. So again, Cleveland gets more picks, Houston gets to move up 6 spots, and gets to pick ahead of Minnesota and Seattle. Okay, now the last 2 trades, they're after the draft trade. So, if the draft didn't, fall the way you wanted it to fall, then you'd call these teams up and, maybe make this trade for these players that are most likely on the trade block. Well, I'm about 95% sure both of these players are on the trade block. Now, the first guy, or the first team I would call, Chicago. And again, this is only if the draft doesn't fall the way you want it to, and you're not able to get a running back. If the Texans aren't able to get a running back, you call Chicago, and you offer them a 2020 4th round pick and a 2020 7th round pick for Jordan Howard. Jordan Howard has been underused, and it's been rumored over there in Chicago that Jordan Howard is indeed on the trade block. Now, I would wait to make this trade after the draft because obviously, what if you end up with a, David Montgomery? What if Bryce Love falls to you in the 6th rounder? Whatever. You never know what can happen in draft day, so that's why you would wait till after the draft to make this trade. Now, Jordan Howard, he is 6'1", 225 pounds. He's currently 24 years old. He turns 25 mid-season, so he's young. He would be the perfect 1-2 punch with Lamar Miller because Jordan Howard is a legitimate power back. He's strong. He's a strong runner, downhill runner. Kind of what we needed. His only flaw is catching isn't his strong suit, but that's fine when we have Lamar Miller. So, in my opinion, Jordan Howard will be the perfect 1-2 punch with Lamar Miller, and we'd be able to run the ball down people's throat. Now, the last trade I would consider making if I'm Houston is, okay, if you can't get the running back in the draft, and if you already called Chicago and asked for Jordan Howard and you can't get him, then I would call Cleveland again and ask about Duke Johnson. Now, Duke Johnson, I'm pretty sure he's on the way out as well because obviously they got Nick Chubb, who's really good, and they picked up Kareem Hunt, who's also really good. So Duke Johnson has no place in that team. So you call Cleveland and you offer a 2020 5th round pick, and I'm pretty sure that gets it done. Now, Duke Johnson, he's an okay running back, but he's a really good receiving back. You would get a really good receiving back who can even play in the slot. So not only do you have a good receiving back, you also got a backup slot receiver who's reliable because he can stay healthy. So those are the only trades I would consider if I'm Houston. Any other trade, honestly, is probably unrealistic. These Jalen Ramseys, these Xavier Rhodes, these Pat Pete trades, they're unrealistic. These 4 trades that I listed, though, I see them being possible, and I would highly advise Houston to do the first 2. The trade for Xavier Howard and move up to 17. If Houston wants to be a contender in this league, they gotta be a little aggressive. But not too aggressive because you don't want to give up all these picks to trade up to like top 5 or top 10. Just move up a little, jump ahead of the teams that are going to pick guys you might want. Because there's been times that Houston has wanted a guy and they stayed put, and then another team comes out and jumps ahead of Houston to pick the guy that Houston wants. So Houston has to be a little bit aggressive this time around and jump ahead of teams that want the guys you want. Because I guarantee you, Minnesota and Seattle, they're picking offensive linemen because their offensive lines, they're as bad as ours. So that's that. Those are my trade scenarios for the Texans. Comment down below your opinion on my trade scenarios. Comment down below your own trade scenarios. And be sure to like and subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace.